Started. Fantastic. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining this mentoring panel today. My name is Chelsie Romulo. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm an assistant professor at University of Northern Colorado. I'm also part of the planning committee for this conference, and so I'm really so glad that folks were able to join us despite the transition to a virtual format, and because I know everything going on in everyone's lives is craziness. I did want to mention that the planning committee and folks in the Society of Conservation Biology have been really welcoming in allowing the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee to infuse themselves across all the themes and all of the different formats of this conference. And so that's why you see mentoring featuring folks from Black Birders Week, and you see our plenary session yesterday featuring inclusive conservation. And so I hope that you all enjoy that kind of different format for our conference this year. For today's panel, I'm going to introduce a few folks that were part of co-organizing Black Birders Week earlier in June. I just want to mention that this was an effort among 30 young Black STEM professionals that has ballooned up into a much bigger thing featuring Black people in all different fields. I think this week is Black in Neuro, so if you want to follow that hashtag, please do. It was originally the brainchild of Anna Grifty Opoku Agayemen, and you can follow her as well. I'm going to put her hashtag in the chat log, and so please do that. In this session, we're going to have Chelsie Connor. She's a senior biology major at MSU Texas. Deja Perkins, a conservation biology graduate student at NCSU. Tykee James, who works as a government affairs coordinator for Audubon, and Danielle Belleny, a wildlife biologist and science communicator. And what we tried to do, in addition to featuring folks from Black Birders Week, is also get folks from different places in their career and to embrace the idea of mentorship as not just some old person who has decades in their field. And so, you know, how can we help mentor each other and contribute to mentorship from a diverse background? So the way that this will work is that we are starting out with some 4 basic questions for introduction that we'll have the panelists all answer. And I'll ask our viewers to go ahead and feel free to ask questions as our panelists are speaking. Use the Q&A box. I'm going to monitor that, and I'm going to actually turn my video off so we're featuring just the panelists in what you're viewing. And after we ask our 4 questions, then we'll open it up, and I'm going to ask you also to use the like button so that if there's lots of questions, I can prioritize those that the group wants to have answered. All right, so to start us off, our first question is, can you please introduce yourself and talk a little bit specifically about your path to your current position and career, including the formal and informal education you have found most useful? For this first question, the order we'll go in is we'll start with Chelsie, then Danielle, Deja, and Tykee.
Hi, I'm Chelsie Connor. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I am from the Commonwealth of Dominica in the Caribbean. It's like in the middle of that chain between 2 French islands. Beautiful island, you should check it out sometime. And my education started there. A lot of the plants and animals that we have, I learned what they were called in Lesser Antillean Creole. And it took a lot of figuring out for me to find out what they were called, what Americans would call them, what they were called with European scientific learning systems. So I do still remember a lot of those names, but I did have to adjust to that. And I always knew that I wanted to be a scientist. I always knew I wanted to work with animals. And I started school in South Dakota. It wasn't a great fit for me. So I left, I went back home for a year, regroup, and now I'm here in Texas. And I've been studying anoles, and I love anoles so much. They are my favorite lizard. And I'm very happy studying them. I have 1 class left, and I'm looking at PhD programs right now. I'm very grateful for the informal learning that I have. The fact that I grew up on an island with so much biodiversity, I was able to see all of these amazing animals and plants. Two of the anoles that I'm studying, they are on my island, and one is endemic to my island. We have a lot of species that are endemic there as well. So being able to see that, I wanted to learn more. I was really curious. It's like, how do animals work? What do they do? Why are they doing this thing? And those questions have stayed with me, and they've gotten deeper and more complex. And I'm working on answering all of those as best as I can right now.
Hi, y'all. I am Danielle Belleny. I am a wildlife biologist currently in San Antonio, Texas. I also go by she, her, hers pronouns. And so my career trajectory was definitely a wild ride. There was no clear pathway to get to exactly where I am. So growing up, I was definitely like the outdoorsy kid, always picking up snakes and bugs and all kinds of things. And that love for outdoors was definitely facilitated by my grandparents. They have some land near Austin. It's basically a large farm with like some open grassland areas. And I was just exploring there as a very young child. And they encouraged me to, ask questions and figure out things on my own. And a lot of like the Black experience, especially for me as like a Texan, is being outdoors and is exploring the outdoors. So this type of thing isn't like new to us. Being Black in nature is definitely instilled in my DNA pretty much. When I was growing up, I did not know any of the names for a lot of these animals and plants and things that I would find. So I would just make them up, and that, fulfilled everything that I needed to do. So when I started my formal education, I started out as a biology major with aspirations to become a veterinarian. Those did not work out, and I'm glad that they didn't, because then I transferred schools, changed my major. It was a heartbreaking decision to do, and I talked about this story a little bit more on my Instagram page. It was my STEM Noir story. STEM Noir is a research and holistic wellness community for Black women in STEM. So if you're not familiar with that, I definitely encourage you to reach out to them and get connected, because they're doing some awesome things. So yeah, I transferred, changed trajectories, and found myself in the middle of nowhere, but studying something that I absolutely love and have passion for. I got involved in some internships. The second that I got to the new school, it was Texas A&M University, Kingsville. That's where I started my wildlife biology degree there. So definitely internships are why I am where I am right now. That was very key to, adjusting to what it is to be, to think more in the scientific way that, academia wants to think. And that allowed me to definitely integrate, the knowledge that I grew up with my passions, and also like the formal education to allow me to be a better professional. Yeah, so if you want to know like more about the story, because again, it was a wild ride to get just my bachelor's degree. After that, I went on to get my master's degree at Tarleton State University. That was a very interesting experience also. I learned a lot of things about quail. My love for birds was facilitated during that time too. Started bird watching a lot more and gained a lot more confidence in calling myself an actual scientist, and calling myself and claiming the things that I, probably was earlier on, but finally understanding, okay, this is who I am. I'm going to be there. I'm firmly planted, and I'm taking in what I want to do. So I recently left a internship position in Massachusetts on Martha's Vineyard. It's an island up in Massachusetts. Lived there for about a year. Being a wildlife biology assistant, got some interesting experience in endangered species and a new ecosystem after growing up in Texas pretty much my whole life. So definitely jump out there and take those internships that sound like a far-fetched idea or something that you might be uncomfortable with, and just go with the flow. Definitely, fake it till you make it is a valid cliche that you should definitely hold on to, because it will take you far. And you definitely have the talents that you already need to go where you want to go. So that's me.
Hey everybody, again, my name is Deja Perkins. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I grew up in Chicago on the Southeast side. And I am the only one in my family who even likes to be outside at all. So I didn't grow up with a lot of experiences being outside in nature. I mostly got a lot of my experiences like going to zoos and aquariums and museums. And I knew that I loved animals my entire life. And so I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian and or be in zoology or something like that, something involving animals. And when it was time for me to decide where I was going to go to school, I really wanted to go to like one of those big schools with a bunch of options about what I could do, but I was limited into where I could go based off of how much money I got for school. And so I ended up getting a scholarship to go to Tuskegee University, which is where I ended up going. And I majored in animal science. Like I said, I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian and learned pretty quickly that learning about domestic animal ag wasn't necessarily for me. And I switched to studying environmental science and natural resources. And going to a smaller university with a smaller program, I definitely utilized internships to gain a lot of that experience. And so throughout undergrad, every summer I did something different. So, I did an experience doing environmental education, did an experience in Minnesota, doing visitor services, did a research internship, within a university in Georgia. And then I also did an experience at the federal level with USDA Wildlife Services. And so really that was the way that I got a lot of my experience. And I stayed on the formal track for a lot of my career, going straight from undergrad and then doing a 3+1 program and getting an additional year of wildlife experience at Mississippi State, and moving straight from undergrad into my master's program at North Carolina State University, where I really focused on urban ecology. And so I like to describe myself as an urban ecologist and science communicator with a focus on birds. And so that's my study organism. So I mostly stayed on the formal, like super formal track. And now I am interning with Audubon, North Carolina as a coastal resilience intern and really trying to figure out what those next steps are. Currently enrolled in the PhD program at North Carolina State University.
Hey everybody, my name is Tykee James. A little bit about myself. I'm from Philadelphia and I moved around the country, but I never really understood my relationship to place until I got my first job. Senior year at high school, these folks, white folks, came into this predominantly Black school and were recruiting people for this program where you were going to be an environmental educator at Cobbs Creek, which was at the time the park in my neighborhood. And you would get paid to be an environmental educator. They would teach you, of course. But when I understood that immediately, I was like, wait, I can earn money while I learn? Okay, sure. And that kind of opened up the idea that being in the environment is a career. Even though I went to school to study mathematics and computer science and teaching, I thought I was going to be a math teacher. Not very good at the math, but I was very inspired to teach. Birds are a really great vehicle to connect people, I found, to connect people to what their local parks are. And I like that Deja said she calls herself an urban ecologist. I think because of the work of urban ecology, I found my path to conservation. It was very important to me early on that I understood the relationship that neighbors had to the park was based off of the city's neglect for that area of the city. It was based off of the move bombing, if you've heard of that, and other episodes of police violence on the people of that community. And I understood that I had a place, or at least that program had a place in history to say that, we can be Black in nature in our own neighborhood. There is a history that is traumatic, but the Black experience doesn't have to end there. So with that one job as an environmental educator, I had that for about 4.5 years into college. It was just a job that I had on the weekends and some evenings. I got a random call from a state representative asking me to be her scheduler because somebody left her office and they were just looking for some random person to be a scheduler. But when she saw on my resume that I was an environmental educator for a couple of years, she thought that I would be a good environmental policy advisor. And then that kind of opened the field for me in seeing that my environmental education experience really helped drive what I thought a good perspective would be for environmental justice when we're talking about policies or when we're having regulatory battles. Having that political outlook on how conservation outcomes matter to people followed me now with the National Audubon Society, where I'm the government affairs coordinator. One of the things I actually did recently was help organize a seabird fly-in where, well, that makes no sense. A fly-in for seabird conservation. And what that basically meant is I worked with folks from all around the country to talk to their elected officials about why seabird conservation, ocean conservation is important to them, and why their elected officials should consider voting for it. And I think seabirds in particular, but birds in general, have really great ways to connect people to places that are important. And it's because we know where we see birds thrive, people also thrive. The park also thrives. The economy can also thrive. So I'm really happy to be a part of this work in the legislative outcome portion of conservation principles. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks, everyone. I always love hearing about people's paths to where they are and thinking about all the directions you might take in the future. To follow up a little bit on some of what you were all speaking about, internships and opportunities that might not have been obvious at first, looking back at how you got to where you are now, is there anything that you would definitely do again? So I'm hearing internships for sure. Or anything that you would change about your career path, something that happened and you think, I think I could have done that differently. For this question, we'll start with Tykee, go to Deja, then Danielle, and Chelsie. And just as a reminder for viewers, in case you logged on a little bit later after the starting point, we're taking questions in the Q&A section, but we have 4 questions to start the panel, and then I'll go to your questions. So I see them coming in, and we'll get to those in just a few.
The one thing, and I talked to my friends about this a lot when I was much younger, didn't have facial hair or bass in my voice, and I was birding. I wish I had an eBird list. There are just so many birds that I'm like, I know I've seen it in my life, but I don't remember when, I don't remember how. I just remember we were walking around and somebody was like, oh my gosh, there's a blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. And I just kept walking. I'm like, man, I wish I journaled better what my progress and my experience has been, because I realize that, at times I can be in a place to share what my experience has been in a way that can include others. And if I was just a little bit better at capturing what my growth was in that, my first job, the job that I was just like, this is just for paying my phone bill and buying a bike. That was just my first job. I wish I did a better job at like journaling. eBird is a way to journal, but actually journaling what that experience was, because I see now, clearly it's been so enriching on my life. And I would hope that there could be ways that I can inspire others to find their path, as unconventional as it may be.
I think for me, I wouldn't necessarily say that there's something that I regret. Like I said, I went to a really small school, grew up in a family that did not like going outside. So for me, in order to get a lot of experience and try and figure out what I wanted to do, I needed to do a lot of internships and a lot of different internships. So not a lot of things that were in the same field, like in the same section of conservation or the same section of environmental and like wildlife biology. So what I would say is that I wish that our field would change to make it, I wish the field would change the norm of unpaid internships, because it's not realistic. It's not realistic for anybody, really, and especially for Black and other ethnic minorities. Being asked to go somewhere, or there are a lot of different study abroad trips that I wish I could have gone on that I could not, because I wasn't able to afford it. And I wish these pay to play internships weren't as, the standard in our field. I wish that there were, I wish people would understand that, everybody has to pay bills. And so you're gonna have to pick and choose, and a lot of times with this field, it ends up being, am I gonna pick to pay my bills, or am I gonna pick to pay for this experience that I need to make me competitive in this field and competitive on the job market? And so that's one main thing. As far as me personally, I wish that I maybe kept a journal with all the connections and their emails and phone numbers so that I would be able to keep track of everyone that I knew and all the connections that I made throughout my career.
Okay, so I like to say that my path is like a series of happy accidents, and I really do mean that. All the hard work and the stumbling has led me exactly where I am, but I do wish that I could have started out as a wildlife biology major instead of, I was just a general biology major to start it off with, again, wanting to be a vet. The classes and the courses that I took as a general biology major, they humbled me, which I'm appreciative of those experiences, especially physics. Man, that was rough. But after, I caught my stride once I finally transferred over to wildlife biology, but I didn't even know that was like a major that I could be in. So representation is definitely something that I wish I had as a younger biologist. If I had known that this was something that I or someone that looks like me could do, I definitely would have started out with this, and I probably would have, who knows what would have happened with that. So yeah, I hope this serves as like a spark for somebody who is thinking of oh, they need to make that switch, or maybe they need to, declare a major. If you like wildlife biology, I think you can definitely do it. As far as doing things again, I would love to do, I had this internship in South Texas, which is still one of my favorite ecosystems, the Tamaulipan thorn scrub. Just a very beautiful place to be. I love deserts personally. You can't change my mind about it. Deserts are beautiful. And I was just basically walking around looking for bird nests in these areas, just wandering around, which is what I love to do, and just discovering, or not discovering, but finding new things and finding bird nests, and being able to watch an egg turn into a bird in 2 weeks. It's an amazing transformative experience. So I would love to do that again. That was a life-changing internship that I had back in the day.
For me, there's not a lot that I would change. The way that I grew up, learning those names, I wish that I remembered more of them, and I wish that I took better care of the books that we have, because we had a forestry officer, his name is Arlington James, and he cataloged as many of the flora and fauna as he could. And all I have left are the bird guide and the plant guide. We had a fish one, I don't have it anymore. It also included the Lesser Antillean Creole names that we have for all of these in them. And living on a Caribbean island, we had hurricanes and lost some of them in hurricanes because I forgot to put them in Ziplocs too. So I wish I would have done that so I could still have those books. They're out of print. I'm trying to find the original people who helped with them. Maybe I can get a copy somehow. I know that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife did sponsor some of them, so I'm trying to figure out how to get in contact with them. But that's one thing that I would change, just making sure that I kept all of those together somewhere safe. Even when I went to South Dakota and I realized it wasn't a great fit for me, the experiences that I had there are still really formative, and I wouldn't change that. And then I went back home and we had Hurricane Maria, and that was devastating, especially now that I'm well into wildlife biology, and coming out the next day and seeing all of the leaves gone off all the trees, and then all the trees are broken and everything's brown. So my island went from being green to brown. And thinking about how are the birds doing? How are all the animals doing? Watching to see the life come back to the island before I left. As scary as that was, that's still not something that I would change, because now it has definitely solidified my position in fighting more for conservation and to stop climate change. So everything has been adding to where I am right now. Probably I would have said yes sooner to going back home, excuse me, to study anoles. So that's how I got into anoles. My advisor studies anoles on my island, and he's for the moment I met him, he's I know your island, I study anoles there, do you want to go do it sometime? And I wasn't sure. And part of why I wasn't sure is because of the money. And I did have a scholarship from my government, so I could have done it a bit earlier. So I wish that I would have. But in the same vein of what Deja said, we shouldn't have to be like, oh, do I want to be able to pay my rent, or do I want to go do this thing? And for me, that one was easier because one, I had that scholarship, and two, I was going back home. So like my family was right there. If I needed anything, they would have been able to help me with it. They were like, I literally could have just been like, oh, I'm gonna drive home real quick and drive home. And my mom would have been there like, what's up, what do you need? But it's still a hard decision for a lot of people to make. And I know that there were people who were like, well, I left the job to come do this. Because there were other scientists that volunteered to be on this trip as well. And one of them was like, yeah, I left the job to come do this. It would be a great experience, but I wish I didn't have to leave the job. And people shouldn't have to make choices like that to go do something that's unpaid, as much as it would be an amazing formative experience, as much as it would be good on your resume. So that's something that I think needs to be changed in general, but I'm still extremely happy that I had the ability to go do that. Also, I wish that I knew way earlier that I could get into wildlife biology, because I thought like, oh, I'll be a vet or something, something like off to the side, because I grew up watching like Steve Irwin and stuff with my dad. And I was like, oh, look at them working with animals on TV. That's so cool. I would like to work with animals, and I guess vet. I guess marine biologists, just like watch things underwater. I had no idea that someone who looked like me could do exactly that. And now I know, I'm like, that's gonna be me. I'm gonna be Steve Irwin before Knowles, I guess.
I'm really excited to see the first videos of Chelsie wrangling anoles, and I hope we can all look forward to that soon. Thank you for everyone's comments, and I just want to add to the commentary about internships is that we do need to fix that issue, because when unpaid internships are the norm, it excludes a lot of people from being able to participate, and that is bad for the field. So the next, and we're going to actually get into this internships and things like that in the next couple of questions. For the next one, everyone always talks about the importance of networking, and that's something in academia we tell our students, like, you should be networking, but sometimes there's not a clear explanation of what that actually means. I made a LinkedIn page, so am I networking now? So can each of you explain a little bit about how you view networking, or how you would define it for yourself, and how that has helped in your profession and to get to where you are in your career? For this question, we'll start out with Danielle, and then go to Chelsie, Tykee, and Deja.
Sure. So networking was this big, scary word to me early, like when I was an undergrad, definitely, because I'd never really talked to scientists before. So it was just like, what do I do? How do I do it? So at conferences, I would be like next to my advisors, or like the other grad students that were mentoring me, and be like, okay, go network. And really, I would just walk up to random people and just start talking, just really anything. And sometimes they listened, sometimes they didn't. But the ones that did actually listen, helped me get the internships and jobs that I did. So, I mean, really, you're just taking a shot in the dark, and it's, you win some, you lose some, but you gain that confidence, and you gain a lot of lessons in that kind of leap of faith. Talking to people at conferences, but also talking to people online. Twitter, Instagram, those are very valuable things that you can use to network. That is still an ability for you to do professional networking. So if you have maybe if you are that socially anxious person that you're not quite ready to take that leap into just talking to random people in person at a conference. Also, we are in a pandemic. So you can talk to so many awesome people online, and it's super simple, super easy. And yeah, definitely facilitate Twitter and Instagram. I know that LinkedIn is an option. I don't understand how that website works at all. I'm so lost. I'm trying, but the reason that I got involved with Black AF in STEM is because of Twitter. And I have group chats with these people now, and we have like made worldwide change because of, just fooling around on the internet. So you can make a lot of things happen. So yeah, just hop online.
Yeah, Danielle is absolutely right. Like, Twitter is amazing. I did not when I joined Twitter, I did not expect that I would be able to have this reach. I'd be able to talk to other scientists like this and learn and form the friendships that I have. But like, Twitter is amazing for networking, and I was surprised to find out that there was such an extensive like network of scientists on Twitter. I feel like now any question that I have about anything, I follow at least 2 people who are in that field who could help me answer that question. And if I don't know who could answer that question for me, I could literally ask any of my friends and they would be able to find someone or help me find someone. If you have a lot of social anxiety, like it's great to have that online tool to help you navigate. And then it'll help when you finally like meet people in person. Like, oh, we've been interacting on Twitter for a while. It might be a little awkward at first, but you know, like the foundation of the type of conversations that you have and how to speak to them. Interacting in person, if you can as well. When I did my research trip back home, I got to meet a lot of other great scientists. Some of them were from the London Museum of Natural History. So I got to meet the curator of Diptera, Dr. Erica McAllister, and I have her phone number. And I talk to her sometimes. And it's literally just because I was just being myself, and I was like, I have a lot of questions about a lot of things. So I would like bring her insects. So I was like, well, look at this cool insect I caught. And then she'd like talk to me about it. And we just talk about the insects and talk about what she found that day and how she sets up her traps. If you have an interest in things, even if it's outside of your field, don't be afraid to ask people about them, because people like seeing your passion. And that's one way to get networking and to form friendships as well, because friendships are important as well. Ask people about the work that they're doing. And I thrive off of seeing other people's passion too. So even if it's not something I'm not immediately interested in, seeing that you're interested in it, I was like, okay, well, keep telling me more. Like, when you encourage people to follow their passions, they're gonna encourage the same in you, and you're gonna like just vibe with each other. Also, like some conferences are amazing to like give you those opportunities for networking. I've only been to one big one, NACCB, Society for Integrative and Comparative Biology, and they had like several different opportunities for networking, several different groups, and being there and being in that environment. And it was also like really casual. It wasn't very formal. There's like, you don't have to call people doctor if they have a PhD. Like, it's okay. And being able to do that really helped, because I was like, oh man, what if I forget? What if I think this person's a grad student, they're not a grad student, they're gonna be mad at me? There's like some people like, we don't care. We're all scientists, just chill and just talk to each other. And having an environment like that for somebody like me who gets really anxious and who has panic attacks, having a really chill, casual environment where it's like, just talk to them. You're going to an anole thing. There's so many other anole scientists here. Just literally just start talking about anoles, and everyone's gonna talk to you about anoles, and you're gonna have a great time. And if somebody cares enough that you call them like you call them doctor because they have a PhD, then they'll let you know. But otherwise, it really doesn't matter. So yeah, just cultivating those environments is super important, and forming friendships. Lasting friendships really help with further networking.
For me, what has been very beneficial to my networking has been investing in how I can develop my leadership. So leadership capacity trainings or webinars on leadership in conservation or leadership in your field are things that I've suggested and things that I followed to help increase my network, because often, you know, you can get a diversity of sectors in the same room that care about leadership or that care about developing their own personal leadership. And then the second thing, kind of to Chelsea's point, is being authentic. You know, people can see right through somebody who's just trying to make a transactional relationship. But when you're really passionate about what you do and you can, you know, communicate that as authentically as you normally do, people are going to love that. People are going to be attracted to that. People are going to want to support that. So, you know, I think that, you know, those are really great points to hit on. Also, Danielle saying the Twitter thing. I think Twitter, you know, for all the magic that it does, it also breaks down those social barriers of like, I can't talk to you because you're, over there, but no, I can just tweet at you. And then, if you give me an answer, cool, and that kind of helps me out. We get to have this interaction kind of in public, and especially considering everything with quarantining. This is, kind of the best kind of engagement we can get across the country, across the world, across time zones that I don't even think, we would have taken as seriously if not for being quarantined.
Networking is so important because if you ask almost anybody in the field, hey, how did you get your job? It's always, oh, I knew a guy. So many people that I have asked, hey, how did you get into this? Oh, well, really, I just knew somebody and they gave me a chance. That's one of the number one reasons why networking is so, so important. Two, networking is hard. There are so many people in this field that I know who, I'm like, oh, why are you interested in this? Oh, well, I like animals, don't really like people, don't really like socializing that much. But it's important. You have to be able to have that skill because you have to be able to talk to people. And I'm not gonna lie, I used to be terrified of talking to strangers, of speaking in public. The first time I had to network was at a conference, and it was forced networking, and it was at the Southeast Association of Fish and Wildlife, SIFA. Forget what the whole acronym stands for, but that's what it was for. And they had these cards for us there, and for all the undergrads, they were like, hey, take these cards, go speak to somebody, and when you speak to them, they'll give you a star. And once you fill out your card, you will be entered into a raffle to get this prize. Even the prize incentive wasn't enough for me. I was terrified. And it was almost the end of the day of the first day of the conference, and I had no stars on my card. And it was just too much for me. My heart was pounding in my chest. And I had one person come up to me and he started talking to me, and, he's like, hey, I'll give you 2 stars if you go over there and talk to these 3 people. He gave me the 3 people that I needed to talk to. And after that first experience, it gets easier. It gets so much easier. It's definitely hard, but I will say that a lot of people in this field are friendly, even if they don't look like it. And it's hard, especially if you're an undergrad, or if you're shy, like going up to, if you're at a conference, going to somebody, they're in a suit, or these old people, you think like, oh, they're super distinguished. They're not gonna, what if I mess up? What if I say something wrong? And don't let those insecurities, don't let that imposter syndrome get in your head. I would say it's as easy as starting and saying hello, say hi, and then start with the W's. What do you do? Where are you from? How did you get in this position? And that'll get the conversation started. And one of the key things is that people love to talk about themselves. So if you start getting somebody into that conversation and just ask them one question, they'll go on, especially if they're, more older and distinguished. They're going to keep going. They're, oh, I did this and I got into this, and just, oh, well, how? Oh, what did you like about that? Or this, and keep going with those follow-up questions. You're going to be sitting there talking to somebody for 30 minutes to an hour. So networking is super, super important because a lot of times it's that way that you get your foot in the door. People will, pass along your name, and you'll get a chance to, meet other people who may be the hiring folks at an agency. I know that for me right now, being in a transitional period, the reason why I have my internship right now is because of networking, because I met somebody with Audubon, and they were like, hey, we have this position that'll be opening up soon. You may want to apply for it. And that's the thing. It's really hard to find a lot of these positions, especially if they're paid internships. It's hard. And so you're going to need somebody on the inside who's going to be willing to say, hey, I've got this coming up, or like our agency is releasing this position, you might want to apply for it. Or, hey, like I saw this, you might be interested in this. I remembered you from this conversation. And another thing on top of that is don't burn bridges. So, even after an internship, a job, whatever, your time at a university, after it's over, make sure you try and keep those connections. And, you know, even if it's just once a year, following up and saying, hey, you know, I did this with you, just want to follow up with you and let you know that I had such a great time, and just to update you on where I am in my life right now. That keeps you in the forefront of somebody else's mind. So just all of that, take it and write it down.
If this conference were live, one recommendation I would make is that a lot of folks will give you business cards. So when you get one, write down on the back or, you know, on the front, you know, whichever side, about your interaction. And after the conference, follow up, send an email. I really enjoyed that talk, you know, ask a question. Write on your own business card if you have them and give it to them. For this next question, I'm actually going to combine one of the questions from one of our viewers with the prepared question. So for this last prepared question, we're going to ask if everyone on the panel can discuss career and job prospects for students who are close to graduating in the current situation. This is a scary time to be entering the job field. And without the current situation, things like networking are important, but it might even be more critical now. Maori Liberati asks, where are these internships and research opportunities that you found on your own? And did you use networks, professional or personal, that helped you identify them? Just as a quick note for everybody, if you are affiliated with a university, or even if you are an alum, check with your career services. Pretty much every institution is going to have a career services office, and their whole job is to help you with your career. And that doesn't just include jobs. It could be graduate school or whatever it is. You paid for that with your tuition. So make use of that resource. Go in there and say, help me find a job. Help me decide on what career I want to do. For this question, we'll start with Deja and then go to Tykee, Chelsie, and Danielle.
So I'm going to follow up with what Chelsie said. I have never, ever, at any of the institutions that I've ever been at, gone to the Career Development Center. And I probably should have. But that's because sometimes it can be intimidating, right? Like trying to go and find this like random office in a random building and trying to figure out like, oh, like what do you say? How do you, you know, it's for me at least, a lot of the social aspect stuff can be very intimidating and deter me from doing and utilizing a lot of those helpful services. So definitely, you know, start there at your career development office. And then two, I would say for at least finding internships, for me, I came in through the federal side. And so they have recruiters for the individual agencies, and they'll be at a lot of the conferences, and, you know, they'll put you on listservs and let you know when, you know, they have a position opening up or when they have an internship. And usually when it comes to the federal positions, if they're internships, they'll be paid. Another thing is, at least for me, I came in through Student Conservation Association, so SCA, and they do paid experiences. Greening Youth, there are so many agencies out there, and you're right, they are hard to find. Yeah, and I think that's the most of it. It is hard to find, but definitely when you're at conferences, talk to people, ask if they have a recruiter for their agency or university, and those are the people that can also help you with that.
So, you know, speaking back to the leadership development experience, the environmental leadership program in particular has a job board, has an opportunities board that shares all types of jobs in the environmental field. From, you know, they do have graduate research and paid internships, as well as jobs, like a lot of jobs in the environmental nonprofit sector, which is kind of the thing that I occupy in. But those folks also hire, like, for example, at Audubon at least, everything we do is founded in the work that we find in our science and what our conservation team has. So, that's, I know, a part of our, bigger network that we need folks to fill in for. And I got, David Yarnold, the CEO and president, to say, quote, "I would be happy to hire them," in reference to the organizers of Black Birders Week. So, I think when those jobs appear, I'll be first to share, because I'm like, well, you said it, I have it on record, sir. And I think, to a more institutional point, what some of those jobs are going to look like, they're going to look like grant funded positions that do have time limits. So it does have a start and an end date, but it's secure, because a lot of organizations, at least in the nonprofit world, just aren't getting the same revenue to fund positions that they had before. I think that, to the point of how we are paying for these positions and how we're paying the people who do the work in those positions, the nonprofit world should think a lot more strategically about how to secure funds so that it can foster the diversity that it truly seeks.
With careers and jobs, like I said, I have one class left, just the one. And I'm currently looking at PhD programs. And what really helped for me is having an advisor who I've been working with this whole time that I've been here, and he knows what my interests are. And he has colleagues at universities that have PhD programs. And we've been talking about what my research could be for my PhD and which of those would work best. And I've already had a meeting with one of those potential PhD advisors. And it's super important for me to ask questions just to make sure I'll be able to fit into his lab. And what is the environment there like? Because for me, as a Black scientist, there are certain things that I would need to be successful. There's support that I would need, and I want to make sure that I have that before I pick up everything and I move to a whole new place. And it's very since we're not able to meet in person, being able to ask those hard questions yourself is very important, because you wouldn't be able to go take a trip there and look at the university and see what it's like. You have to be able to speak up and ask about those questions. You kind of have to learn to advocate for yourself, and having someone else to help advocate for you is always amazing. But at some point, you do have to speak up and say what you want, what you would like to see. If the amount that you're being offered isn't enough for the work that you're doing, let them know. It's I don't feel like that's enough for what I'm able to do and what your responsibilities you're expecting me to take on. And you won't be wrong for saying that at all. Either it's gonna be, okay, we'll see if we can work on that. We're gonna see if we can increase it, or we can't do it, and then you move on to your next choice of school or place. And even if it's your dream, that doesn't mean that there's a lot of compromise that you have to for it all to fall into place. You shouldn't have to compromise severely to make your dream work. Regarding where those internships are, the field research that I did, was with Operation Wallacea. And what they do is they have high school students, usually from the UK, because that's where the organization is based, but they also do American ones as well, where the students pay to come on the trips. So they're paying and they're funding our research. All of the scientists and researchers are volunteers, but they use that money to buy equipment and whatever else we might need to conduct the research. And we teach the students how to conduct proper field research. We teach them about the work that we're doing, and they help us collect data while we're doing it. So every day we have a new group of students go out with us, and it's here's what we're doing, here's what these lizards look like, let's talk about these lizards, particularly for what I was doing. How to set up, how to tie a lasso so you can essentially fish a lizard out of a tree. Just teaching them things like that. And it's a great opportunity if you're able to volunteer to do it, because you don't get paid. All of the money that comes into the organization goes to buying the things that you need to conduct the research and collect the data. And room and board is paid for you as well. So that's where all that money goes to.
So I really like the Texas A&M Wildlife Job Board. You can just type that into Google, it'll pop up. It's wfscjobs.tamu.edu. But that's where I've gone for literally every job that I have. And I'll drop that into the chat so that it can be shared to y'all. But and not just jobs are there. There are, master's positions, internships, graduate assistantships, postdoc, faculty appointments, like all kinds of things are on that website. And that's also where I've posted jobs to be for, like, when I request people to work for me when I was doing my my master's degree. I posted up there like, hey, I need some field technicians, come work for me. I posted that there. So I highly recommend checking out that job board for, and it's not just wildlife stuff. There are some other like biology related things on that job board as well. So definitely check that out. Also, when you are applying to jobs, I highly recommend talking to the HR person or those hiring managers. Send them an email, quick email, tell them who you are and why you're looking at that job. Especially if you are a Black or a minority ethnic person, your application is going to get buried under all the non-Black and minority ethnic people too. So if you want to, bump your opportunities up, definitely talk to those people. That's primarily one of the reasons why I have some jobs kind of lined up right now. I am still looking for like an official, like until things are signed, I'm still be applying for stuff. But the reason I have things lined up is because I was like, oh, let me go talk to this HR person. Oh, let me go send this email real quick. Because that's their job. That is their job to do that. I've also been extremely vocal online about being unemployed currently and looking for a job and just having all these woes and struggles of finding a job. And people are like, oh, here, try this link. Oh, here's this person you can talk to. People are definitely rooting for you. So if you are vocal about it, don't be embarrassed about that. Like, do not. It is okay to be searching for a job. It's okay to be in this free fall moment of not knowing what's next. It happens. It happens so many times. So yeah, send out whatever you want to send out on your, social media, on talking to people in passing. If you are on a live stream for a Zoom and you said that you're looking for a job, these are perfect opportunities to do exactly this. So yeah.
I actually have one more point, if I may. So some of the best advice that was given to me when I was in undergrad is to start early when you're on that job search. So while you are still in school, be looking for jobs like 3, 4, 5 months before you graduate, because you want to have something lined up. And like being in the current job search right now, like it is a very nerve-wracking position to be in. So if you start looking and you're not even looking, if you start applying 4 or 5 months in advance, and telling people, hey, like I'll have my, my degree by this date, they'll be there for you, and they will, be able to negotiate that, because a lot of people end up hiring before you graduate.
I think that's an excellent point. And at some universities, we're now seeing, like at mine, we have a professional development class that starts you your sophomore year, looking for positions, careers, getting that network started. And so the earlier you start, the better. There were a couple questions about technicalities of internships from Michelle, but I want to be respectful of time. So I'm going to end with this important question from Caitlin. So for the panelists, do you have ideas for how the conservation sector can better support people of color, particularly in your experience in school and early in your career? And this one's open.
I think, like I said earlier, in my opinion, the best way to help is to, switch that norm from unpaid to paid and making that a priority. So I think a lot more universities and agencies need to offer paid internships, because that internship experience is what's going to make you competitive in the field. You're not going to be able to get a job if you don't have any experience in the field doing what you want to do. And so a lot of people that I know leave the field because either it's been too challenging to get that experience, and they just need money to pay their bills, or because they feel ostracized from the conservation community and they get tired of fighting. And I completely understand, especially within academia. I think that I believe I may have said this yesterday on the opening panel, but I think that we need to start offering additional either grants or scholarships or prioritizing DEI or engagement, community engagement, because a lot of the minority students are doing that type of work. And we need to have some type of like compensation for it, because we can't wear all the different hats and do all the different work and still not be competitive enough because we didn't get, you know, a poster or a publication or something. So I think there needs to be a variety of different scholarships and grants that are available for people who are doing that extra work.
On that point, it made me think about community-centric fundraising. Community-centric fundraising is a movement to put a better social justice lens into how we raise money in the nonprofit world, as I think it relates as well to the world of higher education. Community-centricfundraising.org, very much a mouthful, but definitely worth looking into to see specifically how fundraising can and should be different, so that we can get outcomes that are more inclusive, that are more equitable, so that when we look at what we can achieve in conservation, we're looking at what we can achieve for everybody.
And I just want to add to Deja's point, we need to have things in place. So when a Black student or Indigenous or other person of color reports something to you, that it's taken seriously. Because a lot of the times when these microaggressions or things happen, we're dealing with it ourselves. We need to know that there is support there for us, and that there's people who are going to listen to us and to help us with the situation, because we can't keep having these things keep happening to us and then we're the ones dealing with it, and then that's taking a toll on our energy and our mental health, and those are one of the things that make you walk away from the field. It's not enough to be like, okay, well, we're gonna put more diversity into these fields. We're just gonna hire more people of color, and here they are. We need that support as well, that vocal support, and we need you to be there and to do something, to take action when we say, hey, this is happening and it's not okay, it's not making us feel comfortable. We need you to say something, we need you to do something. We need that action as well. It can't just all be vocal support.
That's a good point. It's not enough to say, oh, like after a microaggression has happened, for allies to come up and be like, oh, that I saw that happening, that was bad. It's like, no, you have to address that person. Like, we shouldn't have to bear all the weight. Like, if you see something, say something, you know.
Hello,
like,
okay.
You know something going on, you know, that's important. Counter spaces. Yeah. The space for us to just be ourselves and have somewhere where we can like have community, that's important.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times something has happened and somebody comes like, oh, I saw that and I'm so sorry. It's like, well, why didn't you say something? Why did you leave it to me? Because sometimes I'm not always comfortable saying something because I'm afraid of that like angry Black woman stereotype. So I'm always comfortable saying something. Please speak up. Especially if I look very uncomfortable. It's very easy to read my face. I don't hide my emotions. If I look uncomfortable, you will know. Speak up. Don't just like come to me after and be like, I'm so sorry. Like, say something. Even if it's just like, hey, I think you should stop, or hey, I don't think this is okay. Even if you're not sure exactly what's wrong, but you can tell that somebody's uncomfortable, step in and like, maybe we should like take a break here, and then do some more conversation and see how you can help.
So we're right at the end here. So I want to thank our panelists and our viewers for joining us. Just to follow up on this last little bit about how we all need to address the issues of racism and white privilege. It's not like a problem that people of color need to deal with, but it's a societal issue. I This is a book that we use currently in an inclusive excellence program. So you want to talk about race by Joma Uluau. It's excellent, very accessible. And so it's a good starting point for folks. The other thing that I'll point out is that when you're looking for institutions and careers, there are ways you can see whether or not an institution is actually investing in and valuing things like diversity, equity, inclusion. I'm posting a link to the chat of the map of Howard Hughes Medical Institute programs in inclusive excellence. This is where we take cohorts of professors and teach them about things like microaggressions and how to address them directly in class, how to support our students of color. So find an institute, if you're looking at universities for grad school or things like that, look at this map. Who's participating? Who's missing? Those kinds of things are important in how we're supporting them. All right, I wish we were in person and we could give a big applause to our panelists. I want to encourage the viewers to scroll down in the chat. I put everybody's Twitter handle in there, so follow them on Twitter, send messages, send encouragement, send pictures of birds and anoles, all those kinds of things that contribute to our networking and community. Thank you so much to our panelists, and I hope you continue to join in our conference the rest of the week.